All right, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over some new features in version 1.2.9.0. Most notably is the GSX integration, where FSFO can now almost completely interact with the GSX menu, so you no longer have to. As you can see, there are also several other changes within this version, which I hope to touch on in this video, but primarily we'll be talking about that GSX integration. While we're at it, you can expect these types of change logs over the next couple months. I've decided to kind of put creating new aircraft profiles on pause and focus on building out some of those secondary and tertiary features of FSFO that I've wanted to do to make this a complete program that goes beyond just a virtual copilot. We'll talk a little bit about that going on. But for example, I want a more robust passenger simulation. Think FS passengers for those of you who used it back in the FS9 and FSX days. And then I wanted a pilot career simulation where you're getting a schedule from FSFO and you have to fly it. Not only do you have to fly it, but you have to fly it well. We'll showcase that a little bit here too going forward. Also in economy mode, so you could think, again, FS passengers with maybe a little bit of air hauler to flavored flavored mixed in. So that's what I'm going to be working on over the next couple months while I await the PMDG 777 or the Bluebird 757 from Just Flight. Those are kind of my next aircraft profiles. I do have the FSS or FSS ERJ, but just to be honest, that aircraft in its current state, I am just not going to do an aircraft profile. I tried to fly it. It does not fly by the numbers. So I will wait for that aircraft to kind of get a little bit more of a more stable alpha before releasing a profile for FSFO. But it is coming. But for now, we're going to focus on some of the secondary and tertiary. Okay, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the configuration options that impact GSX specifically. Oh, by the way, while we're here, a few of you asked for control over when the APU is started and stopped during the flight. I know some SOPs require it to be turned off after start and not turned on again until the landing flow or after landing flow, while other older SOPs require it to run while until after takeoff checklist. So there is now an option for you to control for all aircraft when the APU is started and stopped. Okay, so let's get into it. So first things first, ground services. This right here command impacts the overall ground service. So if you turn this off, all of this becomes irrelevant. Okay, with this turned on, if you have GSX and you want FSFO to manage the GSX menu, if you will, then you would turn this on. So the ground service jetway, so what should happen is with the GSX integration on, once I connect FSFO to the simulator, you should see FSFO manipulate the GSX menu to go ahead and put this gate into play, or just jetway into place. If you don't have GSX integration, then FSFO will still do it, but they'll just use the default gateway. You guys are familiar with that now because that's been there for a while. So ground services, again, with GSX enabled, after the power is established to the aircraft, your copilot will request through the GSX menu for catering services. If you don't have GSX enabled, then he will request the default Microsoft Flight Simulator catering service. So we want to use both these. So this right here, ground service packs and luggage. So what this is with GSX enabled, at some point during the pre-flight flow, after catering service has been requested and after the power has been established, your copilot will request for the passengers to start boarding via the GSX menu. If you do not have GSX enabled, FSFO does have the ability to simulate passenger boarding times as well as play boarding ambiance music in the background. If this is enabled, that's what he will do. If it's a cargo flight, they will then request the cargo to be loaded at that time. So I do want FSFO to start the GSX boarding process, so I'm going to enable that. The next two options are specific to GSX only. So what this is ground service pushback. After we run the before start checklist, FSFO will automatically request GSX pushback with this option enabled. So ground service confirm start. Once all engines are running and stable, your copilot will confirm that with the GSX. So he will confirm your engine starts with this enabled. We're going to go ahead and enable them all. Just to, again, this video, the point is to showcase the GSX integration. Okay, so while we're here, this is also a good time to talk about some other things. So real quick, automated flight services, what this does is this tells the pursers, the flight attendants in the back, to go ahead and manage when the passengers are served food, snacks, and things of that nature. You can elect to manage that yourself if you so choose to. You can do that by the operations, and right there's your snack. Once you feed them one snack, this then turns into a meal. So if you want to control that yourself, you can do that via that menu. I want the flight attendants to handle that stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that on. So play boarding and loading sound. Again, we talked about if you are not using GSX integration because you don't own it or you don't want to use it, FSFO can play the boarding ambiance music or sounds such as the overhead bins clicking open and close, seatbelt sign, or excuse me, seatbelts open and closing, or fastening and unfastening, as well as hearing passengers converse with each other. FSFO has that ability, so I'm going to leave that on even though I am using GSX integration, so it doesn't matter. So include passenger satisfaction with rating. Okay, so what this is now FSFO will include the passengers' overall comfort, whether or not you fed them, whether or not you turned off the seatbelt sign so they can use the bathroom. Their experience is now considered within the final flight rating. And if this is enabled, you must receive a score above 85. If not, you will be deducted 10 points. So to kind of illustrate this, here's what you'll receive once you complete your flight. You'll receive this kind of report after every flight. As you can see, I passed passenger satisfaction because I received a score above 85, 94.5. There were some concerns about my aggressive taxiing. I probably took a corner above 15 miles per hour, which you shouldn't do, as well as some concerns about the rate at which I was pitching the aircraft down. I think I achieved the vertical speed at one point of 4,200. So obviously the passengers did not like that, so they docked me accordingly. Again, if you don't want passenger satisfaction to be incorporated with the overall rating, then you would just leave that option turned off. I like it because it gives me something else to do during the flight. Speaking of ratings, as you can see, this was broke in the prior version, which I'll freely admit, just terrible. It is fixed now, so you won't be getting anomalies or penalties for things that you're doing correctly. As you can see here, I did fail, though, the approach stability. So what that means is I was either exceeded 1,000 V speed of 1,000 feet, or I didn't complete my landing checklist before 1,000 feet above ground level, as well as a few other parameters. So, and I know I did that because I was almost overshooting the runway and I pitched down a little bit too hard. So approach stability, you shouldn't really exceed more than 1,000 feet. Once you're 1,000 feet above ground altitude, all your landing checklists should be done and you should be in a stable state. That's why I failed that. Okay, on the right side here, you can see that the FSFO now has a much more robust logbook. In fact, the logbook, and we'll go ahead and show that now actually, is now an SQL database. So I'm going to be able to do a lot more with that down the line. So we'll go to company, we'll go to logbook. There's my logbook now. I've only completed 2 flights as I've been testing to make sure it works. You can see there are now charts associated with it, so you can look and see a visual representation of what aircraft you're flying, as well as getting some data regarding your landing abilities. What's factored into this is not only your vertical speed, but also the G-force. If you happen to achieve a great landing speed of, let's say, 200 feet, right? But you end up having to float down the runway, go past the threshold by 3,000 feet, you are not going to get an optimal or firm. You're probably going to get a damaging, because that's when you float down the runway that long, that is a pretty a bad thing to do. So it's not all about the landing rates. There's far more into it. In fact, you want a firm. There is such thing as too soft. This notion of kissing the runway, that only exists in flight simulation. In the real world, you want a good landing. You want the aircraft to come in contact with the ground, especially if there's precipitation on the runway. So you can have too soft of a landing. So don't float your aircraft. Okay, going back to the grid, you can click on the date, and that will give you the relevant information concerning the flight parameters or the logbook. This is just the beginning. It is going to be built out a lot more. So I want you to be able to use FSFO as a comprehensive logbook for every flight you take. And while we're here, this is, I think, a good time to showcase. Again, I want to be able to simulate a pilot life. I know there's some really good software out there that already does that, but if I can prevent you from buying or having to open one more piece of software, I'd like FSFO to do that. So this is part of that effort to kind of build out a pilot career simulation. So again, this probably won't make this release because there's just too much still to do. But within the next couple months, you can definitely see it. So I'm at Bangor. That is my hub. Whoop, did I not put that in there? Okay, that is my hub. I'm not going to worry about aircraft type because the virtual airline I fly for, which is really what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to supplement your virtual airline so you don't have to choose between one or the other. You can use them both. The virtual airline I fly for doesn't require me to fly the specific aircraft type on that route. So I'm going to leave this unchecked so it just gives me the routes without reference to whatever the aircraft type is. Again, the virtual, as long as I completed successfully created a check ride for Delta VA, I can fly any aircraft I want on that route. I want this flight to start from my hub. I want them to be medium flights, and I want a maximum of 6 flights. So that's my bid. I'm going to hit generate flight or generate schedule, and this is my schedule that I will. You are not required to fly this schedule, by the way, but they won't be removed from your flight schedule until you do. This gives you a freedom, so you don't feel like this shouldn't be a job. This should be fun. So that's my kind of take on a pilot's life. You can fly this schedule exactly, but I want to give pilots flexibility. As you can see, we start at Bangor because we told it to. I told it to start at my flight, go to Buffalo, and then Buffalo to Atlanta, Atlanta to Buffalo, Buffalo to Atlanta, then Atlanta to Kansas City, and then finally finishing with Atlanta. As you can see, all medium flights. So there we have. This is the schedule. There will also be a finance aspect, so you will make money for every flight. Think flight or FS passengers back in the day. For those of you flew it for FS9 and FSX, I'm trying to find the middle sweet spot between that and Air Hall 2. So I love both the programs at the time, but Air Hall 2 was more of a company management and not so much focused on the pilot. So I'm trying to find the sweet spot in between those two and hope we can hit it. So look for this, schedules and finances and things of that nature to be built out much, much more over the next couple months. I also have the backend on the database, so you will be able to upload all of this and compare how you're doing with other FSFO pilots, but all that's coming within the next few months. All right, but this video isn't about that. It's about GSX. Before we get into that, I do want to show you one more thing. Last night I was finishing up, and a couple users hit me up on Discord, and they were like, "Hey, it would be great if FSFO had the ability within its information services feature to go ahead and download specific flight information from SimBrief, so they wouldn't have to go back to their OFP. It would be all self-contained." I thought that was a great idea, so worked on that last night and this morning, and here's what I came up with. So here is your summary of your OFP that should give you all the relevant information like the average winds, the cost index, your weight summary. This is would be your load sheet, as well as all the waypoints. So you can not only program your FMC or MCDU, but you can also cross-reference to make sure that all the waypoints are there. You can see I'm flying the Ocean 5, so all your SIDS and stars will be there as well. So it's all contained right here within one tab for you on FSFO. If I'm missing anything, please let me know, and I'll be sure. It's fairly easy to add that into the dispatch report here. So another feature, great idea by one of the users on Discord. By the way, if I could, this would be a good opportunity to kind of promote, get on the FSFO Discord. That's the best time to get a hold of me when I'm working on FSFO. Somebody shoots me an idea and I'm like, that's a really good idea. And I can literally program that in while I'm doing that. All right, so enough about that. Let's go ahead and connect FSFO to the simulator. And once it gets through its checks, downloads, you can see right now it's, I'm going to go ahead and hit Delta. It automatically opened the GSX menu. And you do not have to select it leaves it open for a little while, so you can select which carrier, but it will, if you choose not to select anything, it will just pick the default jetway. But as you can see, this is FSFO. FSO just manipulated that menu for you. The GSX gateway is now connected, and we can go about our duties. Whoop, I have auto flow off. I want auto flow on. So 30, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick look. I already looked at my performance data, and I'm having FSFO literally do kind of everything for me on this flight, so we can just focus on GSX. So I already put my performance data in there, and you should see FSFO manipulate the FMC. By the way, another request via Discord is for you to control your own transition altitude. So that is now a part of the performance menu, as well as FSFO will now assign a gate to you at the uh, arrival airport. So for us, this is Boston, and you can see he's assigned C10 to us. So the gates are the gates are again predicated on the size of the aircraft. So I'm in the 737-700. So I shouldn't be getting a gate assigned. Well, I guess I had my throttles up. Good. FSFO just found that during the safety check. And there's the pre-flight flow. Anyways, getting back, I shouldn't be assigned a gate that's not relevant to the size of my aircraft. So that hopefully you find that feature useful. If not, please let me know. You guys will have to excuse me. The sound is actually turned off to Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'm going to turn it on. Okay, so there's FSFO. He is now running through his pre-flight checklist, waiting for the aircraft to energize. Once the aircraft is energized, we should see or sometime there's a random time that elapses, so it's not routinal. Once the aircraft is energized, you should see FSFO again manipulate the GSX menu and request the catering services, because that's what we identified. Okay, it just takes a little while for the aircraft to power, which case I believe I have ground services powered. By the way, so normally, for those of you who are familiar, I turned off first flight of the day, so FSFO will not be conducting all the system tests. That's an option within the SOP, so if you wanted to turn that on, again, the point of this is to showcase the GSX, not so much FSFO's ability to act as a copilot for specific aircraft. Plenty of videos out there that showcase that, but FSFO is a dynamic and comprehensive copilot program, but it also just gives you a lot of flexibility to fly the aircraft how you want to. Okay, as you can see, he's connecting the ground power. Just did it by the FMC, and he's now waiting for the ground power to show up before he goes ahead and takes the power from battery and puts it onto the ground power unit. So once that power is established, a little bit some time elapsed after that, we should see the GSX menu open back up, and catering will be requested. And we'll just turn that down a little bit. Okay, so now we just put the irises in the nav position, and we're waiting for them to align, which they have, in which case you should see him come down and focus on the program, the FMC. So interesting enough, so this is where it was a challenging with some of the aircraft with the GSX integration, because GSX wants access to that FMC too. So what happens is, GSX, well, FSFO is programming the FMC in this case. GSX will then take control of it to open the doors for the catering service, or to open the doors to let the passengers board. So the challenge was to kind of deconflict the two. So GSX use of the FMC wouldn't interfere with your copilot's use. And there's FSFO. We're telling him to buy the advanced options to go ahead and load the fuel and the payload for me via the FMC. Again, all configurable. In this case, it's in the advanced options, and I'll show you those as we go on here. Okay, so there's the initial programming for the FMC is completed, and now the copilot is out on his walk around. And what that does is now that gives me an opportunity as the pilot in command. Excuse me. The one thing you have to do, for those of you who are familiar, you have to program the SIDS and the stars. But that's it. FSFO's got everything else for you. So we'll program our route, our test route here. And so we are all done already. We'll just go back and make sure. There we go. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Control plus Alt, and that's going to tell the copilot to come back in. And then you should see him program the performance data. Okay. Here's the copilot coming back in. Real quick, I just want to make sure. Yep. I do not have my. Let's go ahead and configure FSFO so we can actually hear him. And that's going to be coming through my. Let's see. What do we want that through? Let's have that come through my headsets. Again, completely configurable. And I'm going to put them all through my headsets. Yeah, I forgot I changed that. So, and there's GSX. And now he just requested the catering service. Again, you can choose. It leaves it open, the menu open for a little bit, so you can choose what it is you want. Other than that, it will use the default. So there's FSFO just requested the catering service for you, and then once he finishes the performance data, he will then. By the way, the reason why it's waiting, it's because FSFO does not want to mess with the GSX.
Okay, to start boarding, Captain.
And there we go. So it just asks us if we're ready to start boarding. Now you can say, go ahead, send them down, or you can just hold Control Alt. So we're going to hold Control Alt.
Go ahead and send them down.
And there it is. There's FSFO requesting the GSX boarding. And again, it leaves the menu open for a little bit, just so you can choose whatever it is you want. But okay, so down here now we have we're standing by. GSX or FSFO will keep account of the number of passengers loading within this window right here, so you can glean that without the menu. Again, we'll leave this open. I'm gonna say nobody because it seems kind of foolish. The pilots are already on the aircraft configuring it, so I wouldn't ask them to board, right? Turn down GSX just a little bit too so it doesn't override us. So it will wait until 1, and then you'll see account 1 of whatever GSX are boarding. So far working well. I forgot to give you the disclaimer that this still is being very much worked on, and we may encounter some bugs on the way, but so far so good. Requesting catering right on time, requesting the boarding right on time, exactly how it should. So there's FSFO. I'm sorry, guys. Let me get my throttle here in the right position. So now the pre-flight flow is completed, and you can see the passengers are now starting to board. 1 of 126 are boarded. Again, FSFO is reading that from GSX. So what we'll do is we'll just wait. And was that somebody? Yeah. See, this is GSX is great. This is one of the issues with it right now that and to be fair to GSX, I have not configured this. You can do a manual configuration, but this is sometimes what you get if you do that. Passengers walking in midair, but still a great program. Still got a long ways to go, but I enjoy it. I enjoy it immensely. So, okay, so what's going to happen now is let me go ahead and pause so you don't have to watch all 126 board the aircraft. I'll go ahead and pause, and then once we get to the end, I'll come back. Okay, welcome back, guys. As you can see, we got 115 of 126 passengers loaded. What we could do is we could have run the pre-flight checklist, but I wanted to wait until you came back just to kind of explain a new option or a change to this version of FSFO. As you can see, I have a departure briefing enabled as well as approach briefing enabled. The departure briefing now is changed. If you have this enabled, it will play at the beginning of the pre-flight checklist. So I'll show you that here in a little bit. Conversely, if you're using voice, you can just turn this off, enable voice, and just call for the departure checklist anytime you wanted it. And the same is true for the approach checklist or the approach briefing, which will now play at the beginning of the descent checklist. So again, there are other options if you don't want to use voice. We just have to wait for the luggage to load. If you don't want to use voice, there's still a third option for you to have these options turned off and still get those briefings. And that is by simply going to the performance page and going down here, selecting departure briefing, and then go. And then same with the approach briefing. By the way, this is a good time to talk about the advanced options. FSFO now has a minimize button that which would be right here if I didn't have this option set to 1. I don't like to have the minimized button shown, so I elected to hide that. You can turn this, this comes 0 as default, so you would see the minimize button right here. Again, that was asked for. Another option that was requested is to remove the to and the from approaches from the departure briefing. As you're going to see here in a little bit, or hear here in a little bit, that it sounds a little robotic, so a little robotic for some people's taste. So you can elect to remove that and still have the departure briefing, but just not hear it. In fact, let's go ahead and run through the departure briefing now. I'm gonna do everything by button mode, by using voice mode. So here we go. We're gonna run the pre-flight briefing, and we should hear the departure briefing.
Ready for the departure briefing? Alright, it will be a left seat takeoff from Kilo, Bravo, Golf, Romeo, 2, Kilo, Bravo, Oscar, Sierra. Taxi route is per ATC instruction. Will be departing on runway 15, climbing via the departure procedures to an initial altitude of 34,000 feet. Standard reject and emergency procedures apply. Any questions?
Okay, and now that that's over, it will go right into the
Pre-flight checklist.
The pre-flight checklist.
Oxygen.
Test it.
Navigation, transfer, and display switches.
Normal and auto.
Window heat.
On.
Pressurization mode selector.
Auto.
Flight instruments.
Heading set altimeter set.
Parking brake.
Yep. Yeah. I forgot to engage my parking brake.
Set.
Fuel control switches.
Cut off.
Checklist complete.
Okay, and there's the checklist completed. Real quick, while we're the voices, so I do use for some of the voice sets. You notice it's a mix between AI and then the real voice, which sounds suspiciously like mine. I use Microsoft Azure AI cognitive AI services for the voice sets. However, once I get everything that I want completed, then there are a few of FSFO awesome users who have volunteered already and have already created several voice sets. But I asked them to hold off because I don't want them to have to re-record everything. I want to get to a stable state where I think I have most of the voice sets I need before asking them to record their voices. So we will have a lot more human sets here, probably within the next, I would say within the next 30 days. So you'll be able to choose. There was a nice gentleman from Germany, so we'll get a good German set. We'll get a good Polish set, which will be awesome, and some great users. All FSFO users, or several FSFO users, have volunteered their talents and their time, and we'll create those additional voice sets for us going forward. So really appreciate them. You noticed that I had to remove them. We had like 5 or 6 other human sets, is because I added probably over 100 different WAV files over the last month and a half, and I didn't want, again, ask them to record their voices again, just to come back and ask them to redo it in a few months. So that's where we're at. Okay, as you can see, GSX is still loading the luggage onto the aircraft. They're 67% complete. By the way, GSX is a great product. It truly is. Love it. But it really doesn't I don't use GSX a lot, to be honest with you. If I get a chance to fly, I just don't have the time here to wait for the GSX to take the 20 minutes to load the luggage onto the aircraft. So I use FSFO's embedded ability. Okay, so as you can see here, the FSFO is disconnecting the jetway. The jetway will become completely disconnected once GSX is finished loading the carts, or finished loading the bags, which they should be just about doing, because FSFO won't request the gate to be disconnected until over 80% of the luggage is on. Yep, as you can see, they're still loading. They're just finishing up now. Once they remove you'll see the GSX gateway will detach, and there it goes. Again, that's all FSFO. You as the pilot in command, you don't have to mess with the GSX window at all. So that's completely FSFO, and I'm glad to see it's working so well. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and we will close our door. And then that will signal, since we're in auto mode, that will signal to FSFO to go ahead and automatically start the before start flow. And just wait for the door to close, and here we go. So we'll start the APU, check the fuel panel, and then you can see, by the way, down here in this box, and things that are in magenta, those are your things as the pilots that you should be doing. Check ACARS is in there, so if you fly, or if you use any virtual ACARS, or if you use SimBit World, for example, that's just to remind you to make sure that those are started and running, so you get credit for these flights. Again, you can start your pilot clock. That gives us a block time, a gate-to-gate time. So I will go ahead and start my clock over here. You'll see the pilot will start, the co-pilot will start his clock during the before takeoff checklist. So this gives us the block time, block to block, and the pilot's clock will give us the amount of time we are in the air. Okay, we're just waiting for the APU to spool up now, and then you'll see the fuel pumps go on. I don't think we have fuel in the center tanks. It's a relatively short flight from Bangor International down to Logan, so I don't think I have fuel in the center tank. So FSFO will leave those off. If I did have fuel in their center tanks, you would turn them on. You just saw your co-pilot put the aircraft onto APU power now, which we will use, as well as the APU bleed for power to start our engines. Air conditioning panel, packs go off. External lights are on. If it was nighttime, he would set the appropriate light settings for the night. And here is your co-pilot down here. He's now disconnecting the ground power unit since we're on APU power now, and then he will remove the chocks for you. So we're just waiting now for the ground power to disconnect, which it did, and now you'll see him remove the chocks, which he just did. He will set his page to the performance side, and there we go. So now let's go ahead and we will run the before start checklist.
Before start checklist. Flight deck door.
Closed and locked.
Fuel 1420 pounds.
Check.
Passenger signs.
Set.
MCP. Speed 138. Heading 150. Altitude 34000.
Check.
Takeoff speeds V1 134. VR 135. V2 138.
Set.
CDU preflight.
Completed.
Rudder and aileron trim.
Free and 0.
Taxi and takeoff briefing.
Completed.
Anti-collision lights.
On.
Checklist complete.
Okay, there you go. So, by the way, hopefully not only are you able to see, glean the, I do not want the
Due to icing conditions, please stand by until push is completed and brakes are set.
So you saw once we completed the before start checklist that FSFO automatically requested the pushback for you. By the way, FSFO also comes with its own pushback feature,
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback.
which you can use if you do not want to use the GSX feature. Again, right on time, the FSFO right after the pre-flight checklist or the before start checklist went ahead and requested the pushback. So we're just waiting now for the truck. We told it no icing either. So hopefully what you're able to...
Departure checks completed. Bypass pin inserted.
Okay, now they should ask us to release our parking brake, which we will do. But hopefully you're also able to glean that FSFO has completely configured this aircraft for me. The only thing I have done is selected the SIDS and stars. Now, that is not the case. This is all, if you're new to FSFO, this is all configurable. There is also an option if you want to use realistic crew ops, which balance the workload between the pilot and the co-pilot. You can turn this on, and that is based on Boeing's recommendation. I'm going to build this out. Several users have provided me with SOPs from their airline. So, for example, we'll have a Southwest Air SOP option that will be within that. So if you're flying the Boeing and you want to use Southwest option between that, eliminates tasks between the the pilot and the co-pilot, then you can have that option. All right, so this is one where you do need as the pilot. This is the only time I want to go nose left and tail to the left. So I want my nose to go
Release
left.
parking brakes.
And as you can see, this is all FSFO, controlling that GSX menu for you.
Dimension push. Due to icing conditions, please stand by until push is completed and brakes are set.
As you can see, it's a cold day out here at Bangor, snow on the ground. This is my development computer, so it's not set on, on the standards that my simulated machine is on. But even on this, I kind of look out and just still impressed at the environment that Microsoft Flight Simulator can create. This is my home airport, and looking out this window, it mimics my home airport. So what I would expect to see in the skyline on a mid-January day. So just impressive, and to think how far we've come from a simulation. All right, so this is going to be a long pushback, unfortunately. So if you can just bear with me. What will happen is once we get the nose left, and normally I would go ahead and start my engines right now, but because of the icing conditions, we are going to wait. I wish I had more time because GSX, again, is a fantastic utility. It's just the time for the pushback, the time for the icing, the time for luggage to load, that, conservatively adds 25 minutes conservatively to every single flight. And the ambiance is terrific and incredible, but if you have a finite amount of time each day and you're trying to get in a quick 2-hour flight, I don't have it, which is why I built a not nearly as robust passenger and cargo simulation as GSX, but it provides me with the level of realism that I have time for. So hopefully it does the same for some of you who are trying to balance kids and work and spouses and all those good things. So, and anything I can do to improve it, please just let me know. Most of these updates to this version are all a byproduct of user request. So definitely appreciate that. The next big thing is, again, to get more human voices recorded, which, again, I plan to do. FSFO user base is just phenomenal. The guys and girls that are on Discord, just good people, always willing to help. Very much appreciated. Okay, so we're finally turning, and we'll be able to set our parking brake soon, at which time I will start the engines. And then once the engines are fully stable, the co-pilot then should manipulate the GSX menu to confirm our engine start. So again, you don't have to do anything as the pilot.
Set parking brakes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and set our parking brake. And now we're waiting so let's go ahead and you could use voice command, by the way, to do all this stuff, but I'm just staying in button mode today. So I'll hit button and tell
Starting engine 2.
Tell FSFO to go ahead and start my engines for me. So the starter switch was put into the ground position. We're waiting now for N2 to get above 20%, and then he will introduce fuel into the ignition system, and we should get the engine to fire. And there's the fuel at 20%. And then once both engines are started and stable, that's when you should see FSFO go ahead and manipulate the screen and tell GSX that we have a good engine start. By the way, all this is at the other end too. So if you get to your destination airport, your co-pilot will use GSX to go ahead and attach to Jetway, and will also start the deboarding process as well. So again, if you're using FSFO with GS integration, unless there's something outside of the normal flow, like
Engine 2 cutout.
de-icing, for example, you won't have to touch
Starting engine 1.
the panel. In fact, I'll reach out to the GSX developer and ask them what's the parameters for NAI. So if I know the parameters, I can read them myself and anticipate asking whether or not de-icing is required or not. So I'll even, hopefully by that time I release this, be able to manipulate that screen as well. Okay, so here we go. We're just waiting now. Fuel was introduced into engine 1, and we're waiting for ignition there. And then once both engines are stabilized, then you should see FSFO tell GSX that we have a good engine start. So far, so good. Usually when I do these videos, because I literally get done like writing some piece of code and then come right into the YouTube video, and there's always one or two, bugs that I have to explain and, affirm that I will fix them. But
Engine
so
one
far, so
cut.
good. No bugs. It's working as intended. So there's engine one cutout. Both engines have started. We're just waiting now for both engines to stabilize, and basically when we're waiting for the vibration and the some other things to match before we say good engine start. Which here we go.
All engines stable.
Engines are stable. There's the GSX menu,
We have a good engine.
and there you go.
Disconnect.
We didn't touch anything. We just got good engine start, and then after the FSFO does that, he will go right into the after start flow. So again, because I have FSFO to do everything, so I can concentrate on the video. The only thing I have to do is if I was on VATSIM or even with using the Microsoft Flight Simulator, is get the taxi clearance. By the way, interesting enough, I actually wrote, there's code in the background where FSFO can even manipulate the Microsoft Flight Simulator ATC menus. So I might go ahead and decide to implement that back in. So you as the co-pilot don't even have to mess with the ATC for Microsoft Flight Simulator. The only problem with that is I thought within Microsoft Flight Simulator there's an option already for the co-pilot to manipulate the comms. Okay, so real quick, it's cold out here in Bangor today, so as you can see, cold weather ops have been detected. So what this is FSFO will put the flaps into the full position, and our job as the pilot is to monitor to make sure that there are no significant hesitations or that every one of the flaps detents is being able to manipulate to. So there we go. And then what will happen is he will retract them full up. In cold weather ops, you do not leave your flaps extended. You keep them up until you get to the until you run your before takeoff checklist. So he will reset them once we get to the runway threshold because it's cold weather. All right, let's go ahead and run the taxi checklist, and I'll do this in voice. Taxi checklist.
Taxi checklist. Generators.
On.
Probe heat.
On.
Anti-ice.
Set.
Isolation valve.
Auto.
Engine start switches.
Continuous.
Recall.
Checked.
Auto brakes.
Rejected takeoff.
Flight control.
And then he's looking for full left, full right, full up, full down to deflection. So here we go. We'll go full left,
Full left.
full right. Whoop! Sorry, I hit the. My fault. I had a button configured and I accidentally.
Checked. Ground equipment.
I accidentally hit it. Clear.
Checklist complete.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I lifted my my throttle off the floor and it changed the
Set.
view and all that other stuff. So there we go. There's the taxi checklist, and let's go ahead and get back into the co-pilot or back into the cockpit. And I think that's a pretty good place. I think the stop that shows GSX integration works really well. I'm hoping to get this released tonight, if not tonight, tomorrow. The one thing I ask is if you are upgrading FSFO from a prior edition to to this version 1.2.9.0, is make sure you read the instructions. I have changed added a lot of files, changed a lot of the backend infrastructure in order to get ready for a more robust passenger simulation and economy and all that. So it requires a full uninstall and then a full reinstall to kind of prepare for those down the road. So make sure you read the README file that shows up when you install the aircraft. It will save yourself a lot of headaches. So with that, I think I'll sign off for now and really look forward to a future video where I can showcase some of the pilot simulation and the economy model. That stuff is stuff I'm kind of really looking forward to doing because it's a break from the normal aircraft profile stuff. But rest assured, There are other aircraft profile in the pipeline, the Mad Dog being one. Any PMDG 77 drops today, most of the back end is I will probably have the copilot ready within a month, or excuse me, within a week of doing it. So pretty excited for that. All right, with that, thank you for watching. And again, thank you for supporting FSFO. The gain in the market share over the last 6 months has been incredible. So much so where we're going to be featured in 2 flight simulator magazines. So that is the kind of growth we're experiencing, and it's really all because of you. And I truly, truly appreciate it. Hope to see you on Discord. With that, until next time.